Hi, you are watching SIghtsIn Plus, and this is Romesh Srivastava. Please to subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates, and conversation with the top-notch CHROs, thought leaders, and business heads. Today, we are going to dive deep how the BFSI sector is performing and how is going to be the job market for the BFSI sector in this fiscal year, financial year 2025. Joining us, Mr. Anil Salvi is MD and Group Head Human Resources with the GM Financial Products Limited, and Ms. Gauri Das is a Senior Vice President Human Resources at India Factoring and Finance Solutions. So, welcome both of you.
Pleasure.
If you look at the
Thank
data,
you.
we have seen recently the banks and other whole BFSI sector. They have announced their Q1 results, and if you look at the Q1 results, so these are very optimistic, especially if we talk about the banks. I have seen the Q1 results of a couple of banks, that may be SDFC, Axis Bank, ICICI. So we have seen very optimistic this. There's a revenue growth, and that is around 12 to 16%. And if we look at also a report which is released by the team leads, that is named as the Employment Outlook Report. And according to this report, there's also estimation, you can say they have projected the growth for the financial year 2025. For the banking sector, they have projected the growth around 7.21%. For the non-banking financial companies, the projection is for the 5.41%. For the insurance sector, the projection is 5.25%. For the fintech, that is 4.89%. So this is the projection for the growth projection for this financial year 2025. There is also intent of hiring, what the report says. So according to this report, non-banking financial companies, that would be on the top of this. 65% of the non-banking financial companies have shown the intent to expand their workforce. Then banking companies, that is 60%, and then there is the insurance companies, 57%, and fintech, 56% fintech companies, they have expressed their intent to expand this workforce. So based on this data and the Q1 results, how do you see how is going to be the job market for the BFSI sector in this fiscal year?
See, Romesh, thank you so very much for inviting us for this meeting today. Feel privileged to be part of this conversation with you and Gauri. While I'll share my thoughts, I'm looking forward to learn from both of you as well through your views and your thoughts and experiences. So thank you once again. Yeah, coming back to how the BFSI sector is going to perform or do in time to come. See, I think BFSI sector in its own kind of shape and size is largely dependent on the how the economy works, right? And if you see today, the economy, especially the Indian economy, seems like it's on steroids. And when the economy moves in a particular manner, there are the indicator services which also have to step up and augment their support. Right. So if the manufacturing is growing, if the demand is growing, if the output is increasing, I guess the services sectors also would need to step up and run parallelly along with the same. We also are, a kind of economy where services sector is not as large a percentage of economy as you would see in a developed economies. So you would see there's a lot of scope for the Indian services sector. So I'm talking about services sector at large, which will include even the BFSI, and BFSI would be a large contributor to the entire services sector. So there is a significant potential for the BFSI sector to grow in time to come. So if you actually analyze and then see the kind of growth that has happened in the sector, it is largely driven by the advent of the technology, right? I think we are, I think today, the largest transaction economy, if you're talking about online financial transactions are concerned, and which is being facilitated by technology. So certainly, the technology has gotten the country together and made the transactions so very easy. Also, the characteristic of our country has always been we always call ourselves underbanked, underinsured. I think there is so much scope for the services to reach to the last person. To that extent, I think I see a massive kind of a potential in the country. What is interesting to see, Romesh, is the kind of growth that uh, tier two cities are also grown, but the tier three and maybe the other, if I could use the word tier four cities or the towns, are going to see in time to come, will be humongous. I think the opportunity is there, and it is for taking. And if you're going to, the reach is going to increase, the inclusion is going to be higher. Obviously, you would need the kind of talent to support all this growth. I'm fairly sure that in next at least a decade or so, I see we remain extremely buoyant with the requirement for the talent and the skills that is being asked by the industry. Of course, I can talk about the challenges, maybe that subsequently, if you want to talk about it. But to answer your question, the growth, yes, but demand would be there for certain skill sets, and I'm sure the ecosystem will evolve in such a manner where those skill sets are or the competencies are provided to the industry by the education system that is prevailing in the country.
So taking your words like economy is on a steroid that is doing good, and as far as the growth is concerned, so definitely you support, I think, the robust growth in BFSI sector. Gauri, what is your take on this?
Yeah, thanks, Ramesh. I think Anil has described it very well. Things are really good. And if you look at attrition data of last year, it reached around 50% even for established banks. Micro institution, it was at around 72%, especially in sales. So all that indicate there is churning, people are hiring, and a lot of this action is happening in tier three. I was recently in Coimbatore, and we went to the outskirts, and I saw the kind of I think it was tier 5 or tier 6, but the kind of activities, the kind of infrastructure that I saw, I realized that a lot of action is happening there. If we look at credit growth, recently there was a news that there is an increase of 19%. So a lot of money is being given. SME, MSME, there is a very large focus as well. China plus one was a strategy, and now maybe even Bangladesh plus one can become a strategy. So for India, there are a lot of reasons why we are growing. And yes, I fully agree with Anil that the outlook is very, very positive for BFSI. And we are going to look at a lot of talent requirements. It is already in place. It's very difficult to hire. I'm sure Anil will also share the sentiment that hiring is challenging. So all this indicate that yes, the economy is buoyant and there is only positive outlook from here.
So Gauri, you remind me two things. One, that is the attrition, as you talked about. So I'll also, I would like to have your views that what are the HR challenges right now, what you see with the BFSI sector. And you also highlighted that credits are up around 17%, but deposits are also down. So this is also a challenge for the banking sector, that how they increase the deposits. So I would like to know that what are your challenges see as HR professionals in the BFSI sector right now?
So challenges are many, but so let's start with the attrition first. So attrition numbers have gone down in comparison to last year. The situation was so bad that RBI had to intervene and ask, why are you losing so many people? And people were getting, I know some people where the situation was like, even if you give an offer on Thursday and Friday is last working day, yeah, the person is about to join from Monday, by Saturday, he or she would have got one or two more offers. So situation was really bad. A very large private sector bank, which is kind of a very good pay master. A position in tier three city was open for 11 months, a sales position. So I was asking he's my friend, and I was asking him, are you looking for a superhuman? Why you are not able to close this position? And he said, I'm just looking for selling skills with some communication. Tier three, I'm not even focusing about English. Still, I'm not able to close it. So the situation still remains the same. Things have slightly improved, but I would still not say that we have reached where we were until few years ago. And since there is so much expansion, the attrition piece is going to be really same. Second thing is, and especially with RBI or any other regulated entity, since I come from a non-bank, RBI is our regulator, and there's a lot of focus on compliances, and that employees need to understand, because we have bankers who have been working in the sector for 20, 25 years, 15, 20 years, when compliance was not such a big requirement. But today, it's not only about ethical, not ethical, it's also about what is going to happen to the whole setup. We saw so many uh, kind of we saw so many measures taken by RBI, and they fined so many organizations. Some licenses were also taken away. So it has become a question of kind of survival, that the compliance culture is set in. Then again, the third thing is in terms of audit queries or solving the questions from the regulator. And you may not have only one regulator; you may have multiple regulators. Like for us, the parent company is listed in Europe, so there is a regulator from there. Also, India, there is a regulator. There are internal regulations. So many regulations that you are working upon. So a staff needs to be sensitized about it. So that is second challenge. And the third challenge is the general attraction of talent, likewise the retention piece of it. So the most two, I would say, the attrition and hiring. And second, I would say the setting the right compliance culture is another challenge that I'm seeing.
Anil, generally, when you go through the quarterly results, like IT companies, the banking and other BFSI sector, they don't share the attrition numbers and the headcount numbers. So I did not find actually. So how do you see the attrition is going to be in this financial year 2025? Last year we have seen very high.
I think, when you talk about attrition, Ramesh, I think, we need to segregate the type of resources, right? So typically in the industry, BFSI, we call nowadays, there is this nomenclature called FOS, right? It's basically feet on street. So you have Gauri just talked about, the people who sell, people who collect, people who essentially are out there in the market on the road. So the attrition in this particular category is significantly high. The reasons are twofold, right? I think, this is the kind of a large workforce which essentially, churns a lot, basically because they are massively under scrutiny as far as the performance is concerned, right? On a month-on-month, whether you're it's a job which is extremely rigorous and high pressure. And then you see the lifespan of this particular job or the role is not more than 2-3 years. The person would like to move away from doing this after maybe a couple of years, and within those couple of years, he will change those 2, 3, 4 jobs, right? So you're typically there in that one company for 6 months to about a year. And hence you would see that, about a churn of about, 50, 60, 70%, which would happen in the industry. A lot of that attrition is by virtue of performance, because organizations, when you get employed, expect certain kind of an efficiency and productivity. And there's a large set of people who are not able to deliver. So what happens is the employees on themselves, know that they're not going to be, crossing the threshold, or they're not going to be making the incentives which they want to make, and then they move on. So there's a lot of attrition which is happening uh, out of the industry, out of the role. So they'll get on to something else, which is probably a non-sales, which is not something which is as scrutiny driven, or probably they'll get into a role which is maybe as a supervisor, so they don't have to run about in the market themselves. So the very nature of the role that is there, where you will find a lot of attrition. But if you see other roles which are non-FOS, you would not see that much of an attrition, right? So because the working conditions are stable, they are all driven all rightly. And if you're talking operations or other executive roles, I think they would be very similar to what is being offered in some other places. So you would need to basically, identify the FOS versus non-FOS. A lot of organizations, Romesh, have this FOS categories of employees not on their roles, right? So you outsource, so you have this outsourcing company, so you employ them to employ these people because you really don't want to manage the transaction. So you provide us people and you bill us the kind of number of. So you now, for example, I'll give my own example where my housing finance company, we have made a policy that even the salesperson or the FOS, we employ them on our roles. But if you see in the industry, 60-70% of the industry would not employ them on the roles. So if somebody has to release attrition number, it is not going to be apple to apple. So one company which is outsourced the headcount, and one company which is basically having this FOS on their roles. So what basically they will do, what the firms will do, is non-FOS kind of attrition number. So which will be in the region of the 20-30% or whatever the normal attrition that is there. But blended average would be always higher in terms of this. So as Gauri said, keeping these employees engaged is a massive challenge. The biggest challenge that we again would face is about the behavior of these employees which are on the street, right? If there is any kind of a mis-selling, misbehavior that happens, we as an organization are directly responsible for the same, right? And the regulators are pretty stringent because most of the time it's a public money which is at a stake. Either if you're a bank, then you're custodian of the public money. But if you're a borrower, then it's your money which essentially is at stake. So you need to have certain regulations, certain compliances in terms of how we are doing the business. So it's in time, I think when I used to work for the banks, while the what was very, very important, how was also equally important. Now, to the point which Gauri has made, how is becoming more important now because the compliance is basically defining how you're going to do business. Right. So that essentially is underlined. Today, first half of the day, I was exactly doing the same because we are also, some certain businesses that we run are governed by RBI, certain businesses that we do are governed by SEBI. So there are certain things that they expect from us, right? And all the employees, for example, should know the KYC rules, right? I'm just giving you an example, or the info security, scenario in the market, and then employees have to be cognizant of the same. So how do you remain relevant? How do you remain compliant? How do you remain competitive? And the biggest challenge that I'm witnessing is how do you keep the employees engaged, right? They're not staying with you also longer. And how do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them engaged? Especially when all the employees which I'm noticing are becoming more and more aspirational, right? I think by advent of the social media, the introduction of the thoughts, concept, year level, and the kind of salaries that that probably their peers would be drawing would become motivators to them. So the people also want to progress.
Attrition is high for some specific roles, not for all the roles. So that is absolutely true. If we look at the data, Gauri, so around 24% demand for the entry level positions is increased in 2024 itself. And if you look at the BFSI sector for the consolidated, so 5 million jobs to be created. So the apprentice skilling in this year, 2025, how do you see this data?
I think the Apprentice Act has worked very well so far. When they kept it only for manufacturing, the results were not as great. But now that it is in service also, I'm increasingly seeing that the skills learned there are really useful and it does increase employment because what are we looking at? And I'm sure all HRs will have this pain that when they hire people from MT as MT directly fresh from the college, there are a lot of things that they need to be taught to them. So when they come for apprentice, even in the banking sector, there are so many roles for which apprentice can be hired. And for as per my understanding and experience, the overall Apprentice Act or the changes therein are really helpful to increase employment. But I would also say that only because this act is there, employment is not going to increase because no bank or nobody in BFSI is going to hire people just because they are already there as apprentice. So they may cut, like you said, entry levels are increasing. They may cut senior levels, mid levels and all, and they can take that apprentice as an intake.
So, Anil, like other industries, so BFSI is also not immune to the technologies, and there's a fintech and a lot of technologies right now in this sector as well. How do you see it is? What kind of the job it is going to create when it comes to fintech, or also in banking, also in non-financial companies? How do you see what kind of the jobs would be there?
I think now clearly there's a massive demand for certain skill sets and certain skill sets which are basically revolving around the technology, right? So there's a lot which is being spoken about AI, right? And I think while we keep on talking about how artificial intelligence is going to impact, but it's already making a lot of inroads into our lives, right? A lot of it we are not aware, but I think it impacts us. I think we are very much part of that environment, and I think our behavior today is monitored through the technology. Our needs, requirements are assessed through the technology, and I think the technology is assisting in improving our lifestyle demands, right? I think thanks to the technology, everything has become accessible. Right from the manufacturer to the consumer, there is absolutely no intermediary which is left today. So there are certain businesses or the roles which are going to evaporate, while there are going to be a lot of other opportunities which are going to be there. So I think it is going to be coming at certain cost. But fortunately, we as a country, as I said, we are growing. So the net demand for the talent and then people is going to keep up going. But one should be mindful the demand is going for the skilled workforce.
So, Gauri, what would be your concluding remarks here on this?
Okay, I would say that technology is here to stay and it is reshaping the world. So I was reading a report recently and it said that Blinkit is going to take away a lot of share of Amazon business because now we want to blink and we want to get everything done. And who invented it? It is someone who's just 17 years old who got this innovation as Zepto also. So we need to be on edge all the time. We need to be technology savvy. We should not think at any level of the organization or any seniority level that we are immune from technology. We need to learn it. We need to keep pace with it. But we need to also identify because there is a lot of information available. So it becomes misinformation. And what we really need to know, we need to figure out. So work with mentors is what I would say as a concluding remark that those who are there, those who have done it, even they don't know 100% because the pace of change is very quick, but at least they can guide you well. So network, connect with people as heterogeneous set. Like we have a very good example in Anil. He's managing a business and he's also managing HR. So he has a double hat and he understands both aspects of it. So likewise, connect with different set of people and be ready to adapt. So I would say adapting things. I would say networking with diverse set of people and mentoring.
Thank you so much, Gauri and Anil, for sharing your wonderful thoughts on this. If I would like to conclude this, so basically, as per data, what I have, the BFSI sector, what the growth was in 2021, that was around 8 to 10%. In 2022, it has been 10 to 12%. And then again 12 to 14%. And this year, which is expected, that is around 12 to 15%. And there are very good job prospects, there are good growth that is expected. So on this note, I would like to thanks you again, Gauri and Anil. Thank you for joining.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so very much, Ramesh, for having us. Pleasure.